We're going to switch gears. We've heard from European Commission. We've heard from 3 different sectors about the progress they're making. Now we're going to drill into some very specific challenges that we're aware of. So last summer, CISA had 8 virtual listening sessions where we tried to figure out what are some of the pain points, what are some of the areas in software transparency that we collectively need to bring our visions and our expertise to address. And it covers the whole gamut of the crawl and the walk and the run. So we're going to hear from those working groups. These meet every week. They're led by some very hardworking folks from the community. And we're just blown away that people keep showing up and giving their time for these. What we wanted to do is make sure, because we know that almost no one has 5 hours a week to spend on this, we want to be able to catch up and share what each working group is doing and what help they need, what they're going to plan for next. So we're going to start off with VEX. Maybe some of you aren't super familiar with VEX, so Art's going to talk about that. SBOM has been around for a while, right? People have been talking about SBOM for a decade. VEX is something that grew out of the SBOM community at NTIA and now at CISA. So we're really happy about the great progress this is starting. It is new, so people are still figuring out how to use it. Art's going to give us an update. Art Manion from Surveillance.
Thanks, Alan. Welcome. I'll say this is going to be an intermediate topic. I'm not going to. Oh, good. Cool. Okay, so just to say, we're all at different stages of our SBOM journey. If you're really, really new, VEX is about an intermediate level item. There's an on-ramps and adoption working group. You're going to hear from them later. They are very focused on getting folks up to speed and getting folks introduced into the entire area. So, you know, that's a great place to get started if you're looking for how do I just enter this in the first place. I am the single co-chair at the moment of the VEX working group. If you're curious what VEX is, this is literally from our most recent paper. VEX was born from SBOM, right? We talked about SBOM is going to have these great dependency graphs of all of the software in our software. I'm going to find out I had multiple copies of OpenSSL, multiple copies of Log4j upstream somewhere. Am I affected by this CVE, that CVE? And when my users and customers come asking me, how do I tell them that status? A lot of times the status is not affected, but still, how do I convey that? And this led to the work on VEX. VEX is designed to work with SBOM born from it, does not have to have SBOM. They can be done completely independently. Really, and I'll say for myself, the reason I got involved in SBOM back when it started here was I work in vulnerability disclosure, vulnerability analysis, and I need to know what software is affected by the vulnerability. And most of us really want that as well. There are plenty of other use cases for SBOM. VEX really focuses on the vulnerability management use case. So even with no SBOM, it would be kind of nice if we could convey affected, not affected, under investigation, that sort of status for all kinds of vulnerabilities in a more standard way. There are, you know, if there are n number of ways of people out there telling you what's vulnerable or not, there are n number of ways for them to convey it to you. It's a pretty big mess. We defined VEX, and this was, you know, an intentional choice for our work here, as talking about a single vulnerability. So one CVE ID if you work in that field, one status, affected, not affected, under investigation, and you can have multiple SBOM software or non-SBOM software components listed in there. So if you can collect a bunch of components with one bit of VEX information, great, that's some efficiency, but we designed it this way after a lot of debate, just as a way to organize the information. I'm going to do a bunch of pictures next. They are intermediate pictures, but I'm going to go quickly, and there's a nice little fake animation story here. Oh, sorry, I lied. VEX status, you can read about this. Not affected, affected, straightforward. Fixed, and under investigation. These are the four legal statuses defined by VEX. Not affected has a whole other branch of information. These are called justifications for why the assertion is being made that the software is not affected. This was touched on a little bit earlier. These are roughly in order of how strong the justification is. The component is not present. Yeah, you're probably not affected by that vulnerability, right? Vulnerable code has been if-def'd out, also probably a pretty strong justification. These others are an open question, but at the stage we are with VEX, the decision was put them in, see if they are used, see if they are believed, see if they are helpful, and if not, we revise this later. So here come the pictures. This is in SBOM. VEX works for any node in here, except we have really started off the whole VEX work with the end final product. So I think it's mostly visible. Frank's final product here is sort of the focus of our work. You can see Frank has an operating system and a browser in his product. Maybe it's a device with a kiosk and a browser interface. And thankfully, all of Frank's upstream suppliers and their upstream suppliers are all playing nicely in the SBOM world and have given their downstream's SBOM information. So we have a complete made-up graph. Except, of course, a vulnerability is reported way back upstream in this compression library. In fact, if you look carefully, it's in an old version of the compression library. So what's highlighted here is VEX information, a vulnerability, a status, and a single component. And let's say this Campy organization, maybe Campy is an open source maintainer. They've already had a newer version of the library, 3.1, but they're not sure if the older vulnerability affects that version. So they're going to say, we are investigating, another VEX status, under investigation for the newer version of the library. What does Frank say? Well, he's going to go with under investigation because he's not exactly sure yet. He has to look as well. And this is also VEX information, right? Frank's VEX delivery, we could say something like this CVE that affects the compression engine. I don't know its status in my product, so it's under investigation. And if you can consume this information from Frank in a somewhat automated way, you don't have to call your support contact and ask what's going on. In fact, Frank, after investigating further, decides he's going to go out on a small limb perhaps and say, hey, I've got these mitigations in place in my product. I don't think this thing's exploitable, and I'm willing to send out a VEX assertion saying inline mitigations exist, not exploitable in my final product. That's Frank's choice. Bad news for Frank, or reality, right? Somebody forked this compression library a while back, and there's an entirely different chain of supply chain that comes to Frank's product. So this fork here, someone else has taken the Campy compression engine or compression library, and they've got I'll make up a portable P4, portable version of it. Those folks investigated, and they're saying vulnerable code not present in their VEX because they actually if-def'd or compiled out or took out the code when they forked when they forked it or after the code separate evolutions of that software developed. So VEX is here. This is VEX. It keeps flying downstream. This is VEX. And as we stated earlier, I can talk about multiple components with VEX all at the same time. So this is a very small but vaguely representative piece of SBOM with a bunch of VEX information. And that's the picture version of VEX. So there's 8-9 pages worth of what all the fields of VEX mean and how they go together. You can go read that if you need to get into this and understand the details, but this is the picture version as well. From the VEX working group and prior art, these are the publications. This first one from September 2021 goes back to the NTIA SBOM era. The next 3 have been published under the CISA era. Minimum requirements is it's close to being a specification for an informational specification for what VEX should look like. The working group is currently working on a document working title, when to issue VEX information. This sort of gets into some guidance as to who might issue VEX, when they might want to issue it, what events, what conditions might cause someone to go issue a VEX. There are VEX implementations today. I was looking at Red Hat, purveyors of fine free software. Red Hat provides CSAF information for their security advisories. Sure enough, there is VEX information today from Red Hat. You can go get it live in JSON format. CycloneDX, OpenVEX, and the SPDX 3.0 release candidate all support VEX. So as we're in a midst of a development phase, there are implementations, there are specifications. It is a work in progress. As much as I've worked on VEX, I will fully admit some testing, some actual production use will likely inform what happens next, or if VEX is working or not working. Jennings was talking about the healthcare, the healthcare provider side, perhaps wanting to see if VEX is working with SBOM. I think that's a great idea. VEX is at a stage where I think some real world experiments are useful. Further document writing and spec writing, I don't think it's going to be much use unless we have some test results in. So I think that's a great idea, and we'd happy to chat about that. That was the fast forward version to try to get us a little bit back on time. I do have some time for questions. Again, I want to reiterate, VEX is a little bit in the intermediate stage. I'm happy to be here. I'll be here, I'll be online on the chat. I'll be in the room today. We welcome all new attendees at the VEX working group if you want to come and join and see firsthand what's going on there. We do welcome new if you're brand new to this, we're happy to have you as well. Just again, we're running at about an intermediate rate, so that's where we are in our SBOM phases. And that's it. So
thanks, Art. Yeah. For those of you who are in the room, we have 2 mics set up if you have questions. For those online, fire a question in the chat. We just have a few minutes left, so fire the question in the chat, and we'll make sure it happens in the room. While that's happening, I have a quick question for you, hopefully an easy one. Yeah. When does the VEX working group meet?
Mondays, 10 a.m. Eastern time. EDT right now? Yep.
Yes.
Mondays, 10 Eastern. Yep.
Massive apologies to those of you on the Pacific time zone. That's 7 a.m. for you. We're aware. Okay, we have a question in the room.
Hey, I'm Isaac. I just want to ask, thank you, by the way, for the overview of VEX. I'm a big fan of VEX, excited about it. One of the things I've been wondering is, in the model that you had there, you've got exploitability on a per product basis. How do you think about on a per product configuration or per product deployment architecture, or kind of, hey, if you have a firewall, then you're okay. If you got 2-factor, then you're okay. Like exploitability in that kind of sense. How does VEX deal with that?
Yeah, the quick answer is that it does not. You might be able to play some sort of SBOM games about, I've got this software set, but I have it in this configuration or that configuration. Also, the not affected justifications, inline mitigations is really defined as something inherent in the software that would prevent exploitability. There might be some room there to say my environment is, will block this sort of thing.
So Art, I do want to chat to that, which is the definition of affected does explicitly look at config, which is to say, if you have to check something, that's something your security team still has to do. So it counts as being affected, even if it's, when I bought it, the documentation said, don't connect this directly to the internet, but we all know that not every organization does that. So affected does encompass config issues, because we know that that's still something a security team is going to have to look into. So it's, does the security team have to do anything is what we're trying to capture for VEX.
Helpful, thank you.
Do we have anything good? Okay. Anything else in the room? All right. VEX, as Art mentioned, is one of the sort of future parts of the vulnerability ecosystem. And as we've been talking about, and as you'll see across the landscape, there are lots of different pieces, and VEX is going to be sort of an important piece of thinking about this and making sure that everyone feels comfortable using SBOM and really prioritizing this, right? We don't want, no one, whether it's a manufacturer or user software, wants to spend time on vulnerabilities that don't actually affect users, don't affect organizations. And so that's really a core piece of VEX. Thank you, Art. We really appreciate all your work. If there's anyone out there that wants to help Art, if there's anyone out there that wants to help Art herd the cats, we'd love to give him a hand. He's been doing it solo for a little while, and we really want this to sort of have some perspectives from the community.